I recently did a fall fragrances video where I focused on 10 fragrances that I personally cannot wait to wear this fall. If you missed that, you can check it out here. Now, obviously, I'm going to be wearing more than 10 different fragrances this fall. And to be honest with you guys, that last video was for me. Those were fragrances for my rotation, to cater to my excitement. And obviously, I share everything with you guys. So hopefully you found them exciting as well. But this video that you're watching right now, this is for you. This is for you guys. I wanted to challenge myself to share some fragrances that I think you should get on your radar for the fall that is coming up really soon, that either I haven't talked about in a while or I haven't talked about much at all. These fragrances will feature notes and accords that are perfect for the fall, like tobacco, booze, and dark woods, warm vanillas and ambers, and lots of spices. You might see some brands and fragrances that you've never heard of or never tried. So links to everything I discuss will be down in the description as usual. If anything piques your interest, I want to help some of you guys out. I'll just say from time to time I see comments saying my interest was piqued or this piques my interest. That's not the right peak. I'm not calling anybody out in particular. Just know that this is the correct peak to use moving forward. The more you know. Let's dive right into it. In no particular order, this fragrance, among several on this list, is quite expensive, so I cannot recommend going out and buying a bottle without getting a sample first. And there will be links to samples down below. I cannot stress that enough. Don't think I'm trying to make you guys spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars for some great fragrances this fall. It is possible that in perfumery you do get what you pay for, so we're talking about quality here. From Roja Parfums, this is Reckless Pour Homme. This fragrance is an absolute love from me. It is a little bit mature smelling, but still timeless. It doesn't smell old-fashioned. This is primarily a very warm, spicy, and woody fragrance with these subtle, almost resinous, sweet, warm tones that kind of envelop the scent. What might turn some people off with this one is the presence of bay leaf. Bay leaf is a pretty heavily culinary smelling ingredient. It's quite herbal and it adds a really distinctive tone to this fragrance, but I think it works perfectly. It gives it personality and character. Overall, it just smells dry and mossy and woody, warm, spicy, and again, a little bit sweet. Lots of cypress in here as well, adding to that sharp woodiness. It's utterly masculine. It smells perfect for slightly more upscale occasions, and I might save it for the evening time because it just lends to that vibe. Let me know if you've tried this one. If you haven't, once again, I'm gonna have links to decants down below. Reckless is one of my absolute favorites from the house for sure, and will be great to check out this fall. From the house of BDK Parfums. Now, I don't always love concentration flankers, but I have to admit that this one was done right. This is called Gris Charnel Extrait. So it's an Extrait de Parfum version of the original Eau de Parfum version of Gris Charnel, which is iconic from the house. It's a very popular scent. A lot of people love that one. This one takes that DNA and it does kind of what an Extrait should do. Doesn't make it stronger or more noticeable, because concentration has very little to do with performance. It has more to do with vibe and presence and behavior. How does this scent behave on your skin? How does it evolve? How does it evaporate? That's really what concentration affects. So I preach on that from time to time. The more quickly you can wrap your head around that and not expect high concentrated fragrances to perform strongly, I think the happier you'll be with your fragrances. Now, this fragrance does have no problem with longevity, at least on my skin, and I smell it all day long. But this is a very unique blend of notes like the original: fig, sandalwood, tea, maybe some iris, but it just works. It's kind of like this juicy fruitiness with a good amount of fresh, spicy cardamom. And there's this herbal, sweet, calming tea, and all of that is made pretty dusty and quite dry and woody by that sandalwood. As it dries on my skin, in my experience, the sandalwood comes more and more to the forefront. It becomes drier and dustier, and to some people might make this version a little bit more masculine leaning than the original, which I think is perfectly unisex. This is a great nighttime fall fragrance, kind of as the bottle looks here. I think it does lend itself beautifully to the evening. Not the most formal fragrance. You could wear it pretty casually, honestly. I think it works just fine. Perhaps a little bit more versatile than the Roja I just mentioned. But if you want a unique scent profile that is still easy to approach and very enjoyable to wear, I would check out a sample of Gris Charnel Extrait from BDK. Now, as I warned you guys, there's going to be some expensive fragrances on this list. This fragrance, it's not the most expensive. We'll get to that in a second, but this is not cheap. A full bottle from the brand directly of this fragrance costs almost $400. $100 US, and that is for 50 milliliters. But you do get what you pay for, and I do recommend getting a discovery set first. I think they have 10 of their fragrances available in a discovery set for less than like 70 bucks. So see what you like. Maybe you don't like this one the best, maybe you do. This is called Kruger from the house of Aqualis. And yes, you'll see here and you'll see in the B-roll that it does have gold flakes in the juice. Nothing new, we've seen that before. Does this contribute to the price of this fragrance? I would imagine so, but mostly the gold is in here to depict the story of the fragrance, which I'm not going to get into right now because honestly it is a little bit divisive. I recommend going to their website and reading it. You can feel however you feel about it, but I just see it as an inspiration for a fragrance that smells wonderful. This is a warm, ambery, sweet vanilla with some patchouli. The patchouli gives it character. It's not just creamy, smooth, rich, almost delectable smelling vanilla. The patchouli gives it this dampness, this slight woodiness that makes it feel like it has more depth to it. There's some spices to kind of kick it off, lots of pink pepper, giving it a little bit of this spicy kick when you first spray it on. But it is a very smooth fragrance. It is pretty sweet. If you want something to compare it to, it does remind me a little bit of Oud Satin Mood from MFK. It is in that vein. I think there's also rose in here. So there is this sweet, jammy, warm, vanillic rose vibe, but the patchouli here is more forward, and I don't believe there's oud in here, so it is quite different. A very opulent smelling fragrance. It does smell expensive, but again, please don't feel called to blind buy this. Get a sample first. I'll link to what I can find down below. This one is pretty unisex. Some people might find it a slight bit feminine leaning, but ever so slightly. It's beautiful. That is Kruger from Aqualis. We've got a beautiful indie brand. I do believe they are based in the UK. They're called Neshama. They have just a handful of fragrances available, maybe just 3 fragrances, maybe more by the time I'm filming this, or maybe they'll have more by the time you see this video in the future. I'm not sure, but their 3 fragrances are beautiful and incredibly unique. And this one is currently my favorite that they sent me per my request when I tried all 3 of them via samples. This one's called Jasmine and Tobacco. This fragrance is such an interesting blend of these 2 notes. It is jasmine, it is tobacco. It is this warm, spicy, sweet, earthy kind of pipe tobacco, not really smoky, almost like tobacco leaves with that good bit of sweetness, but there is this soft membrane to the scent. The jasmine here does not come off overly floral. It's not super powdery. It just adds a soft texture that makes it maybe a little bit more delicate, but it still has a lot of core to it, and it's still something that will be present off of the skin. It is a little bit more bottom heavy, so you do get more tobacco, at least for me, than the jasmine. It's lovely stuff. To me, it wears a little bit simple in the sense that it doesn't change a ton on my skin, but there is a good bit going on. There's a lot of elements interacting to keep your interest, but it's not complicated. It's not a super complex scent, but still very different. Pretty unique, very lovely to wear. That is Neshama, jasmine, and tobacco. Here's a whiskey-based fragrance you don't hear much about from the house of, I always have to read this, Farmacia Annunziata, which is an Italian brand.
If you couldn't tell by my terrible pronunciation,
they call this Whisky Nobile. This is a whiskey-based fragrance, but it is accented by lots of cacao. The cacao here is dry, dusty chocolate. It doesn't smell like a Hershey's chocolate bar. It doesn't smell like milk chocolate or anything creamy and smooth. It is dusty and dry, but the booziness here gives it a little bit more of a smoothness. To some people, this may have a weird tinge of something at the beginning. When you first spray it, I get almost grape vibe. It's really odd, but I like it. I think it's the cacao blending with everything, but that tones down in the first 10 minutes or so, 10, 15. And after that, it just really comes into itself. The booziness comes out a little bit more. It's so interesting. It's so different. I haven't really encountered a boozy fragrance quite like this. So if you're looking for something unique that may not necessarily be the most likable by everyone around you, I'm not going to say people are going to find it disgusting, but it's going to be unfamiliar, and not everyone deals with unfamiliar very, very well. But as long as you love it, that's what matters. Let me know if you've tried it. If you haven't, links down below. That is Whisky Nobile by, here's the brand. I'm not going to say it again because I'm not going to offend you guys any further. We have one of the newest releases from the house of Xerjoff. I finally gave this a full wearing just a week or 2 ago. I've had it for months, but it's been way too hot to wear this out. It cooled off just enough for me to wear this again maybe a week or 2 ago on an evening, and I was surprised at how much I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is a flanker to a very hyped fragrance called Toni Iommi Monkey Special, and they call this Toni Iommi Deified. I don't know if you can even see this with this dark background. You'll see it in the B-roll. Now, first thing I'll say, and I have very little experience with the original because I don't have a full bottle, but I do have a decant and I have smelled it. I did a first impressions video in a YouTube short many months ago. You can go back and check that out. But I will say that to my very limited memory of that fragrance, this doesn't really smell anything like the original. It's kind of head scratching, but it is its own thing and it smells wonderful. It is a woody apple. I get woody, leathery, sweet apple that's not fresh, a little bit floral, pretty dry. It's mostly leathery. The leather really controls the texture of the scent, but it's still sweet and rich and very, very inviting, but there's a darkness to it. It does kind of smell the way it looks. It is quite powerful. If you have the original and you love the original, honestly, you might be a little bit disappointed by this because it doesn't smell like it, but if you can either clear your mind or if you haven't tried the original, I think you're really gonna enjoy it. Nonetheless, sample first, once again, Toni Iommi Deified from Xerjoff. Now, if we're gonna talk about fall fragrances, in my opinion, we have to talk about a fougere. The fougere is a perfect fragrance profile to wear, especially for the early fall when the days are not fully dipping into cool or cold temperatures, but the warmth is definitely dying down. This fragrance profile shines because it has elements that cater to both types of temperatures or cater to that middle ground. And I could have chosen many fougeres. There's many of them I really truly love, but this is one I haven't talked about in some time, and I do believe it is a standout. From fellow reviewer Dan Naughton, from his brand Naughton and Wilson, this is called Gravitas pour Homme. This is a stunning fougere. I have loved this stuff since I first smelled it many years ago when it came out. This is typical fresh and soapy lavender, has a cleanliness to it. It has a little bit of a spicy herbal feel, some moss and woods in the background that give it this grounding to it. But it's this addition of vanilla and maybe even some ambergris, I'm not sure. But there's this musky vanilla that is rich and smooth and a little sweet, and it just kind of moves throughout the entire scent. It dances on the skin. It's a big part of the trail that you leave when you walk through a room. This stuff has incredible sillage. In my experience, I've filled rooms up by accident with just maybe 3, 4, 5 sprays of this, left the room and heard people who entered 10, 15 minutes later saying, wow, someone was wearing a fragrance. Honestly, it was too strong, so had to dial back the sprays the next time. This is a strong fougere. It's a rich one. It has a lot of depth and substance to it, which makes it a little different from the typical scent in this genre. If you've tried Gravitas pour Homme, please let me know what you think. And if you haven't tried it, man, if you like fougeres, give this one a sniff. That is Gravitas pour Homme. Now, this fragrance has a little bit of an asterisk because it's not one that you can get all the time. At the time I'm filming this video, which today is September the 3rd, 2024, this fragrance is available online. Outside of the month of September and maybe even August, I can't remember if this was available in August, you have to buy this in Miami at the Labo boutique. So yes, this is a Labo fragrance. It is the Miami exclusive and it's called Tabac 28. So it is currently available online. However, if you do a quick search on Google, you will see the highest price on this list. And it's absurd, honestly, over $500 for 50 milliliters. Let me double check that. I don't want to come off crazy here and incorrect, but you know what? Okay, so it's $535 for 100 milliliters. Let me see what the 50 is. I'm glad I double checked. The 50 milliliter is still not cheap. It's $375. Honestly, no fragrance. There's not a single fragrance, in my opinion, even ones that I love, that are worth blind buying at a price that high. Sample first, I'll link to what I can find down below. That being said, I absolutely love this fragrance. This is one of the most realistic tobacco fragrances I have ever put my nose on. It smells like a slightly burning cigar. There's a smokiness here. There is this earthy, sweet, warm tobacco. There's some spices. There's a good bit of rum in here. So there's this wet booziness that goes along with that dry, earthy, smoky tobacco. It is so authentic smelling. It's perfect for the fall. It is a total vibe. Now, it's very specific, so if you don't love tobacco, maybe steer clear of this one. But if you are a tobacco lover, or if you are planning on diving deep into the note of tobacco, this is one you got to get your nose on. Once again, I'll link to what I can find in the video or in the description where you can get yourself a sample of this. Again, if you want to take the plunge and buy it from Le Labo and pay the full price, then that's on you and your wallet, but I don't recommend it. Nonetheless, I love this stuff. From the house of Argos, this is one that came out a year or two ago. I've really enjoyed it ever since I first tried it, but I haven't talked about it all that much. This is called Adonis Awakens. This is such a beautiful fragrance that's pretty unique. I haven't smelled anything quite like this. The best way I can describe this scent is this warm, toasted chestnut vibe or some kind of nuttiness, a warm, toasted nuttiness with this sweet rosiness, maybe some spice in there. I don't remember all the notes in here, but that's the way I could describe it. There's a roasted feel, like a roasted, sweet, spicy, warm rose. It's stunning. It's perfectly unisex, maybe a little masculine leaning, great for an evening out, great for date night. Pretty powerful. You don't need much of it. Leaves a beautiful trail, and it will smell like almost nothing else you've probably tried unless you've tried a lot from this house. Lovely for the fall. Use the code FRESH10 at Argos's website to save 10% on any purchase you might make that includes their discovery set, which I recommend. That is Adonis Awakens. And our final fragrance, this is one I've really enjoyed for the past couple years. It's not one you see very much talk about. You don't even really see talk about this house very much on YouTube, and that's just the nature of things. It doesn't get hyped, so no one talks about it, and people overlook it. I think this is worth looking into. This is from an Italian house known as Lorenzo Villoresi. Lorenzo himself is the perfumer. I think this house has been around for some time, maybe at least a decade, maybe a couple decades. This is a tobacco-based scent. Once again, talking about a lot of tobacco in this fragrance, and it's called Atman Xaman. This is a beautiful gentleman's tobacco fragrance. This is sweet, resinous, warm tobacco. I get more of a resinous quality. I think there's quite a bit of labdanum in the heart here that really sings, that adds this balmy feel that is sweet. And the tobacco is a little bit more on the dry, leafy side, not really much smoke here. Overall, it does smell a little bit mature, sophisticated, older gentleman vibes here, but again, not dated. It doesn't smell like it's 30, 40, 50 years old. No. It just has this very refined personality to it. So keep that in mind. You may not love this unless you like these more elevated scent profiles. Let me know if you've tried this one. I know a few of you guys have and have told me in the comments on videos in the past that you also enjoy it, but once again, not a whole lot to talk about it. So I would imagine many of you guys haven't checked it out. So check it out if you're interested in a sophisticated tobacco. That is Lorenzo Villoresi, Atman Xaman. All right, that's gonna do it for me. I wanna know what you think of these fragrances down in the comments. You can take yourself to the description of the video where there are links to everything as I mentioned, and stay tuned for more fall fragrance content. This is my favorite time of year. You'll be able to tell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.